Since this is a world with DroneUp that not everyone understands in a kind of model that people don't understand, let's first define like what a drone is, since it is still pretty new, and then what is DroneUp in this?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I mean, a drone is basically an aerial vehicle, I guess, to use that word, that basically, the pilot is flying, but he's not actually in the craft itself. I mean, he's usually down on the ground flying it, and then it can go fly, lots of different places depending on the size of the drone and the equipment that it has. It can go, hundreds of feet into the air, and can go, pretty far distance away. I mean, it uses the systems on its board between both GPS and Wi-Fi to keep track of where it is. The pilot has to keep it within visual line of sight. So, generally but you can really see on a good clear day, unlike today that we're having in Hampton Roads, you can see at a pretty good far distance, mile into the distance to keep your eyes on it. What was your other part of the question?
DroneUp. Define what is
DroneUp is a drone service provider. So what we have done is networked about 10,000 pilots across the United States. These are certified, licensed drone operators that are licensed with the FAA. It's called the vernacular in the industry is called a Part 107 pilot, and this is the sections of the FAA regulations that licenses drone pilots. So anybody can buy a drone. You guys could go down to Best Buy today, go buy a drone, and you can put it into the air. And about 2 million people in the United States have done that, or at least 2 million drones have been sold in the US. But there's about 200,000 Part 107 pilots. These, again, people that have passed it's kind of like the driving test for drones. And they've passed this test. And in order to take money for flying a drone, you have to pass this Part 107 test. So we've taken about 10,000 of these pilots, put them into a network, created an app to keep track of them. We keep track of their 107 certificates, their what equipment they have, where they are, what experience they have, all kinds of different factors. And the short form of it and the elevator speech of it is basically we're the Uber for drones. So we keep track of all these pilots across the United States. We have them all over and in some foreign countries as well. But we know exactly where they are. We know what equipment they have, and we know what their capabilities are, so that when a client reaches out to us and says that they need drone services in Albuquerque, New Mexico, we pull up into our database, put the mission into it, and then it gets sent out to pilots in that area. And we, based on what equipment they need and based on what the availability is, it gets dispersed to the pilot, and he accepts the job.
Do you have a tracking device on each drone, or is it more that the actual pilot who's going to be driving the thing from the Uber standpoint?
It's like the Uber standpoint. So it's basically the tracking is in the phone. And so then we know, where that pilot is located. So that if we're sending it to a guy who is going on, we want to have the mission in Albuquerque, but he's on vacation in San Diego, we know that he's not in Albuquerque. So don't send it to him. But the converse could also be true. That guy could be in San Diego, and we could say, hey, we got a job for you. You want to make a little scratch while you're on? You got your drone with you? Do you want to make a little scratch while you're on vacation?
I hear a lot of people talking about, from a COVID perspective, contract tracing. Is it similar to, I don't know if you know anything about that, but is it similar tech to that? Or Tim, maybe you know anything about that?
I think it's the similar technology that Virginia has created, that contract tracing app. And I think it's similar to that. But in this case, you've consented when you've downloaded our app, and then you've gone through the whole thing. You've consented to let us know. But you guys see this on your apps all the time. Can we turn your location services on? And it's all the time, or only while you're using the app, or whatever. So we keep track of it that way. And obviously the pilot can turn that off if they want to, but then it's hard to give them jobs if they've turned that off.
Super cool, man. So your app, is that for pilots primarily to use, or is that for end users? How do end users get in touch with you? Or is that web-based?
Yeah, the end users get in touch with us right now the old-fashioned way. I mean, they call us, email us, ask for a proposal. We have a client that we do a lot of work for. It's a real estate investment trust, and they just sent us a spreadsheet of 50 different properties that they bought across the United States that they needed inspections on. So we take that spreadsheet, put it into the network, take it out, and then all of those go to all the different areas, for those 50 different locations, to the pilots in all of those different areas, and then disperse it. So right now that happens the old-fashioned way. Eventually we would one iteration that we see going to is that eventually the client can just put it straight into the app and essentially source their own. And it goes straight out to the network based on where it is. But we're not there.
And the client is typically a business or some sort of government agency, is the kind of end that Tim was talking about? Yeah,
it's usually a business or a government agency. So we have on the government side, we're doing some work for different government, federal government agencies, but we also have a state contract. The state of Virginia has actually led the way on this. They issued an RFP a couple of years ago where they said, they were getting all these different requests from different agencies to buy drones, hire drone pilots, and do all these different things, which had obviously significant budgetary impact for the state. So Virginia basically took the position of, instead of doing all that, instead of hiring all these people across all these different states and buying all this different equipment, how about we put this out for RFP and you let private contractors bid on this work, so then you don't have to buy these drones, hire these drone pilots, do all this different stuff, do the maintenance on it, learn all the regulations and stuff like that. So we submitted an RFP, but what was interesting about it was, and I didn't even know that this could happen until I've been here, but all these different estates attached themselves to the Virginia proposal. And so it's now become a national RFP and a national contract, and any different state. So we've signed on about 15 different states, I think is the current count, and negotiating with a couple more, and they are now attaching themselves to the same thing, and then we provide services to those states.
So you said you have 10,000 pilots?
Yes.
And I would assume that they're all 1099?
They are. Yeah. I mean, we have some in-house, some staff pilots as well, but the main bulk of our work is done by the 1099 pilots, independent pilots. It's folks looking for gig work. Mm-hmm. People, it's kind of like, now with Uber, it seems like you've run into a lot more people that do it full time. But when Uber first started out, it was basically guys and gals who were basically just looking at it as gig work, side work. And that's pretty much where the drone industry is right now. You have some people doing it as full-time work, but it's a lot of supplemental income.
Are you looking to add to that 10,000? Do you have a goal in mind that you want to hit, or are you guys good at 10,000?
Yeah, we're always looking to add to it, because sometimes you always run into spots that you don't have enough pilots, or the pilots that you have are not free or can't get it done in time that you wanted to get it done. So we're always looking for new folks. There's every once in a while people will send us a job in a place and they're like, don't you have any pilots there? I was like, we do, but there's not a lot of people who live there. so there's a pool. It's kind of like, very populous areas. Like, we have a lot of pilots in Texas, for example. There's a lot of people who live in Texas, but then you go to like Montana. There's not a lot of people who live there. It's a nice place, I'm sure. I've never been, but there's nothing knocking it. But when you have less people, then there's less people who are eligible to buy a drone, less people who are eligible to take a 107 test, and it just sort of goes down from there. So